Good morning, everybody. If everyone can see, we're going to be getting started. GFN staff, I see you at the back. All right, good morning and welcome to day 2 of FBLI. My name is Joanne Walsh. I'm the Director of Individual Giving at GFN. As someone that spends the majority of their role telling the story of our food banking partners to donors and the broader community, it has just been an absolute inspiration to be able to connect and meet with so many of you. It's my pleasure to introduce our second Food Bank Impact series. Today's session will focus on how food banks are preparing for and responding to natural disasters. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage, to start this conversation, Hande Tibuk, President of TIDA Turkey.
Hello, good morning. First of all, I'd like to say that we are very happy to be here to tell you our story. And let me start by just a little introduction. Basic Needs Association TIDAR was founded in 2010 and aims to prevent waste and reduce poverty. We are extensively working on building our network of food banks all throughout Turkey. Currently, we have 66 food banks in our network in 35 provinces across Turkey. We are a member of Global Food Banking Network since 2017. And with our food banking work, we also provide an employment program for our beneficiaries because we believe that instead of giving out fish, we need to teach the beneficiaries how to fish. So this is a core important work with our program at TIDAR, and we aim to help the beneficiaries to get jobs, to apply for jobs, and to get recruited so they can start to live on their own. We are also a founding member of Afet Platformu. This is the Turkish name. I just wanted to write it like that because it kind of became like a brand, which is a disaster platform. It's a platform formed by more than 20 NGOs like TIDAR, and we will get to that in a short time now with the detailed work of our emergency response to the earthquakes and natural disaster. So this is a picture of us from London in 2019. We just wanted to tell you again once more how grateful we are for the support of GFN. It has been really helpful with our normal work as well as our emergency response work that we are doing right now. This is a map of Turkey, and as you can see, the 35 provinces where 66 food banks in our network are located. This is the basic sustainable development goals that we are supporting with our work at TIDAR, Food Banking Network. And this is just a small, the numbers for what we have to indicate what we have done so far with TIDAR Food Banking Network. The total number of beneficiaries of TIDAR Food Banking Network is like 900,000 people, and the number of people hired by our HR program is 119, which is, I think, is not a good big number, and we will be working much more to increase this. This is the active members. This is a list of active members of the NGOs under the disaster platform that work together to respond to the emergency relief efforts. So how was the platform founded? In 2020, when the earthquake hit Elazığ, which is a province in the east part of Turkey, the NGOs, as TIDAR and other NGOs, we got together and we were, okay, we have to do something. What can we do? We all have resources. All these NGOs are working in different areas. You know, TIDAR is working on food banking. Some are working on health issues. Some working on education. Some working with women. Some working with children or refugees. So different parts, different NGOs got together and they combined their resources in 2020, and they set up a warehouse in the disaster area to help the survivors. So we worked with the coordination of the local government and Chamber of Commerce. We set up a warehouse, and we provided all the supplies that were needed to be distributed to the survivors in the disaster area. So we were working like in two groups. One group was in charge of funding and procurement and purchasing all the necessary supplies and sending it to the warehouse in the disaster area, and one team on the ground. They work in the warehouses with the help of hundreds of volunteers gathered together to sort out all the supplies that were sent, to put in boxes to be distributed to the surviving families. So after this experience, we decided that, okay, we will be a platform of NGOs who get together after a natural disaster and go to the disaster area and help the government agencies, help the survivors. So as I said, some NGOs are focusing on humanitarian aid, some are focusing on volunteer organization, some are focusing on psychosocial support activities, because that's also very important. And in the disaster areas, they go and they start their support on psychosocial level for the survivors as well as for the help providers, because it is really challenging to be working in a disaster area mentally, psychologically, and physically. So our volunteers and our teams who are working on the ground also need psychosocial support, and our NGOs under this platform are providing that. So in summary, the NGOs with our diverse capabilities, we unite under one umbrella platform to give the best response that we can after a natural disaster. As you know, Turkey is exposed to natural disasters frequently, floods, wildfires, and earthquakes. But the latest earthquakes that hit southeast of Turkey was huge and catastrophic. I mean, there are no words to describe this. It impacted 10 provinces, 13 million people living in 10 provinces. And there was 2 huge earthquakes in just a very short time, and there were always another aftershocks, and there was another one again in Hatay in a very short time. So we did what we did before. We organized. As TDAR, we contacted our food banks in the impacted areas. We had 10 food banks in those cities, so we contacted them. Unfortunately, one did not answer, and it was Hatay. So we unfortunately lost the food bank in Hatay, but then we started to work with other food banks. They changed their system of working. You know, they became like a warehouse operation to help the survivors. So we started to procure and purchase, and we knew from past experiences that the basic and urgent needs that should be sent over there. So we started to send those things. Teams went on the ground to the field, starting to set up logistic centers and warehouses. And as you can see on the map, not only in the impacted areas, but also in the neighboring cities, we set up logistic centers, because it was difficult to send supplies from Istanbul to the impacted areas. It would take like 48 hours under of course, the weather conditions and of course all the road network. So we used Adana, Konya, Kayseri, you know, the neighboring cities also to procure all the necessary supplies. In the first 72 hours, of course, search and rescue operations were ongoing, so we needed to help the help providers to provide what they need. They need accommodation, they need sleeping bags, tents, they need sanitation and mobile toilets, because you can imagine it's a huge area, it's impacted, and there's no a decent place to sleep or, you know, to get your needs. So we were concentrating on supplying what is necessary for the help providers and our teams and our volunteers on the ground. And eventually, we set up 5 centers of warehouses, as you can see on the map. And then, through our coordinations, we are always in touch with the people on the ground. And they tell us, they send us a list of necessities they need. And in the first weeks, it was difficult because everybody's trying to get tents and sleeping bags, containers. But then there was a shortage of some supplies. And you couldn't find a truck to send the supplies. In the first week, it was really chaotic. But we managed to send anything and everything we could find. And this is as TIDAR. TIDAR has provided these supplies, mainly food supplies. Clean water was very important, clothing. And this is as of today. So we are still continuing to supply. This week, for example, TIDAR volunteers are working in Istanbul to make 10,000 boxes of food and hygiene supplies, which will be sent to the 10 food banks that we have in the impacted areas. And Ramadan is coming. We will be supplying cooked meal for the Ramadan. We have sponsors and donors who wants to have, the soup. There are a lot of soup kitchens in the area as well. We are also supplying food supplies for the soup kitchens as well. So here are some pictures. This is the platform members. I don't know how many NGO representatives are in this picture, but it's our actual number of members is 20, but during this, it's like maybe 50 NGOs are working together. And whatever one NGO needs something, they ask and they provide. It's a good collaboration of NGO partnership. This is Hatay. This is Gaziantep, soup kitchen. This is Adıyaman, a food bank, our food bank in Adıyaman. Kahramanmaraş, which was the center of the earthquake. Now, as you can imagine, people are living in tents and containers. Some are living in their own homes. So they didn't want to leave their homes because, okay, it's intact, and they didn't want to leave their stuff. They were afraid of, losing their precious valuables, assets, whatever. So some people are living in their homes, but as you can imagine, life has not gone back to normal. So they cannot have access to supplies. They don't have a supermarket in the corner. They have the money to buy it, but they don't have the access. So we have to provide those survivors as well. There are little villages that nobody reached, but our platform, because we receive all the tips, they call us, they reach us. We are using Instagram and our website frequently, which is very good that people can reach us. And every request is checked, because there's also disinformation as well. And we have a hotline where they say, okay, there's this address, this person, they need this, can you help them? So we check and we try to provide what they need from our warehouses in these 5 locations. So what is next? This will continue. This has to continue until they have their permanent homes. And there's still a lot of things to do. We will continue to supply these areas with food and hygiene supplies. With the soup kitchens, we are working with a chef who's working in the area, and they're providing 200,000 meals per day. We will be providing, these are the top priority needs that we have to continue to provide. And there's also a problem of migration. It's estimated that 5 million people migrated to other cities. So we will be helping the food banks in those cities as well. We have to do that. And we will be working on other projects. For example, we will build a new food bank in Hatay. We have to do that. We are working with our donors, supporters, that we will set up a new food bank and maybe operate it for a year or 2 and then hand it over to a local NGO. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to end my presentation with this. In the first days and weeks, we received huge amounts of donations in cash and in items and everything. But of course, as time goes by, people start to forget, and the donations start to decrease. So we really appreciate your support and everything. We have to continue with this work with the donation and your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hande. It is now my pleasure to invite to the stage Kenna, the CEO of Red de Alimentos, Chile.
Gracias. Hola, ¿cómo están?
Hello, how's everybody? Great. Again, I want to thank you for inviting us to be at this great conference. To me, is really great. It's very gratifying to meet again after so many years, after so many things that have happened these last few years. So thank you for the invitation. And what I would like to tell you now is about the response to emergencies we've conducted in Chile. Chile suffers from natural disasters pretty often. Right now we're having wildfires. So we're going to share a little bit about that. Now, before telling you specifics about the emergency, I wanted to give you some numbers. Some of you may not know exactly where Chile is. In South America, to the left side, the west side, there's a very sliver of a country, a very narrow country. That's Chile. We started our operations in 2010. As I said yesterday, after some changes in tax law, before 2010, what they did was they forced companies, or they mandated that companies showed the expenses that we're having with the wasted product. If it was allowed, there was a deduction. If it was rejected, they had more taxes. Now, after the reform in 2010, the companies could continue destroying waste or could deliver it to a non-profit that attended vulnerable populations. So the tax authorities has a list of all the organizations that received the product. We're certified. All the organizations that receive donated product have to be certified. In 2018, this law was expanded, and it allows the companies to deliver products like hygiene products, sanitary products, etc. So non-food products. Now, in 2015, we were rescuing about 3,000 tons a year on average. Last year, we rescued 13,000 tons, a little bit over 1 million kilograms a month. So we're a national bank. Is like the GFN. We have a distribution center in Santiago de Chile, the capital city. So also in 2018, we developed a technology platform that allows us to rescue product from the whole country through a digital connection to companies. Companies inform us online what products they have to deliver. We have a geo-reference model, and we also can calculate the capacity that each entity has. We can match the products available with the products that the entity needs, based also on the expiration date. You can see of the 13,000 tons last year, we're rescuing 15% through direct pickup in the stores. That's the purple. Now, 2021, after that purple part of the bar, you can see in the graph another segment. Those are the products that we received in donation during the pandemic. That is donation, because those were products that were marketable. But we also purchased product. Now, for the current wildfires we have received help from GFN and through companies that support GFN, and we've been able to purchase product. And the pie at the top, just some numbers. We have over 200 companies that support us. We work with over 500 social organizations, about 1,500 centers for distribution in Chile. We have another beautiful project. I hope we can tell you about that. In 2021, we started implementing the social pantries. It's a program that's similar to supermarket, but attending vulnerable populations, in particular senior citizens. So we enroll senior citizens in our community, and we deliver weekly the same products that we rescue and we normally deliver through social organizations. Now, with our social pantries, we deliver directly to senior citizens, and we also have a whole program of support in those organizations. We have workshops, things like that, to improve the quality of life, the mental health also of senior citizens. I imagine this is something that happens in every country. These are people who are isolated, who cannot climb out of poverty. So this is the support we offer. Going on to the subject of the emergencies specifically, we have a model of response for emergencies. The last 3 years we've had natural disasters, of course the health crisis that the whole world had, political crisis. So we are the first responders, so we can arrive there with the items that they need, plus the food that these populations need. We have connections with the government and with organizations of civil society. So we established an emergency committee. As a national bank, we have to keep working in our regular operations. We cannot just spend 100% of our time on the emergency. So we have a team working on regular operations and an emergency committee. These are the stages of the operation with the emergency. So the emergency committee is called, is activated. We review the roles that each one has to fulfill, what, when, and where. And then we identify the emergency. We conduct an initial evaluation of needs. We make first contact with our support networks, and we have a geographic reference, a georeference of the emergency, see exactly where it is, what organizations we have present in the area, what companies are in that area to provide support. We contact those organizations in the affected area. We make a list of the needs. We survey the number of people affected, and we determine what's a basic emergency kit. And we calculate that, and that's delivered. And we start also collecting resources. You know, as I said, at the beginning of the emergency, you know, there's a lot of help, but as time goes on, people start forgetting. With every emergency, this happens. After 2 weeks, it's not on TV anymore. Everybody forgets, and we are left just us taking care of the emergency. Now, going to the fourth step of the operation, we conduct a review of the stock and inventory. We see what product we have available, the food we have already rescued, plus the ones that we rescue with direct pickup in the stores. We decide then what to purchase, when to purchase. Obviously, we review the budget, make sure we have the monies available, and as I said, we define the purchase. Fifth step, we prepare the product. This is more of the operational aspect, linking with transportation companies. Normally we get donated transportation. Sometimes we have to pay for it. At the food bank, we do not have our own vehicles, our own trucks, so we take care of our transportation needs, whether it is with service donations or we lease the trucks. In Chile, we also have a recovery fee paid by these social organizations. Obviously, in emergency cases, we don't collect that for obvious reasons, but we do calculate that recovery fee that's not collected because it's part of the operational costs of the bank. Finally, we deliver the products. We have a list of beneficiaries. We verify that they actually get to the beneficiaries. It's very important to do that because I imagine this happens in other countries. During emergencies, products are collected, warehouse, and 3 months later we find warehouses with expired product and items that have not been distributed. So therefore we make sure that products reach their destination. The social work team, we have Ms. Vergara, we had other people present here from that team. They're in charge of coordinating all those needs. We have a person from social assistant team on the ground verifying the deliveries, and of course we take care of all the records. With the current emergency, you can see the map of Chile. We have the red square around the area affected by the wildfires that started on February the 3rd. At its peak, we had over 300 wildfires. Many of them remain active. We see the fires, the control fires and others, all those dots. Now, the team wasn't able to, the fire fighting teams weren't able to fight all the fires. Right now we have over 400,000 hectares affected, 2,500 homes that were destroyed, 1,500 homes affected, almost 18,000 people affected. We had, unfortunately, over 3,600 people injured and 26 people died during these wildfires. On the map, you can see the georeferencing that we do of the fires. The purple squares show the clusters of assistance where the organizations are, and then the affected areas with the red, with the yellow circles. So we have a way to respond to the emergency faster. So very quickly, we define what the nutritional needs are going to be. We survey that need. We request donations. We purchase food. We also request transportation. We coordinate the delivery to the affected areas. To this date, we have coordinated about 11 trucks that went from Santiago to the affected areas. And as I said, the social assistance team is always there. And to conclude, there are 3 regions that were badly affected, 24 communities, 24 municipalities, 60 communities, and we have taken care of a lot of people, the people who were affected, but also the first responders, the military, the firefighters, and the volunteers. So we have sent 11 trucks, all close to 68 tons of food, and 26,000 units of non-food products. And I'm going to play for you a video now that we put in social media last week to continue with the funds collection campaigns. It's very important we get the help. We're not under the most favorable economic conditions, so receiving help from the food network is very important. Also, we ask all private companies to
ahora, como ustedes pueden ver, de a poco nos estamos levantando. La ayuda la vamos a seguir necesitando por
need help for a long time. Everything has been lost. Many people were left with nothing, so we're asking the rest of the companies to do the same that the food bank is doing, that the food network is doing. Thank you very much. You can see my email. It's in the app. You can contact me. And something that's very important, I said this in the previous presentation, the emergency continues, and we need to keep up with the help. We need to keep this alive so that these people are not forgotten. There are people who, all their possessions burned down. There's no more wildfires, but their crops are burned, and they're going to need help for a long time. Thank you very much.
I think I speak on behalf of everyone that we just want to thank again Hyundai and Kenna for taking the opportunity to come to FBLI. They both are leading teams actively responding to emergencies, and we're just incredibly grateful that they came to share their expertise and experience. I'd now like to introduce the leader of our next panel, Danny Flores, who will be taking us through global supply chain.
How's everybody doing? We're all doing? Buenos días? Nada. Well, it's great to be here. My name is Danny Flores. I'm with HEB. And this is really a huge opportunity for me, being that I was actually part of the first session with GFN back in 2007. And to see it, what it's come to today, is amazing. And us going through everything that we've gone through in the last few years with COVID, personally, I just want to tell everybody out here, thank you for everything that you have done for all of your communities. We know what the food banks have been put up against, especially with everything being closed down, and how do we feed everybody. And so honestly, as far as HEB is concerned, we thank you from the bottom of my heart. So if anybody who doesn't know HEB, we're a little grocery company down in Texas. We have about 430 stores within Texas and Mexico. We have over 154,000 employees. Our employees, we call them partners because we feel everybody's together and we are a partner in our everyday dealings with retail and community. And we've been open, our doors opened up in 1905. So we've been in business for about 118 years. And the best thing that HEB was able to start with was with Florence Butt, knowing that community, that the people who were in her community came first. And every time when she had access to food, she would donate to those in her community. And since then, since 1905, HEB has taken that step. So in the years past, we've donated over 1 billion pounds of food. Last year, we donated over 33 million pounds of food to our communities in Texas and Mexico. And I'm also blessed to be able to oversee that program, our hunger relief program, along with our disaster relief efforts and a few other things that HEB likes to have me play with. But we all know today we're here to talk about supply chain disruptions. We know it's what COVID did. We know about the conflict in Ukraine and the climate change, and really what the global cost of living crisis. And in the session, we want to take a deep dive into that. And really, I am lucky to be able to share the stage with such a great group of people. And we're going to start with Sylvia. All right?
Thank you very much. You want me to introduce myself?
Yes.
Thank you. So first of all, very honored to be here and to see people from all different places in the world. It is really, really amazing. So welcome to our beautiful country. I am Silvia Suarez. I am the Director for Latin America for Sustainability, Strategy and Marketing. And currently also very honored to be the Honorary President of Pacto por la Comida, that is part of BAMEX. So I'll pass it over to Juan Carlos.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Danny. Well, I'm Juan Pardo. I work for Nestle Mexico. Mexico is the 5th largest market for Nestle around the world. We're a little bit over 250,000 people working for Nestle around the world, with a little bit over 500 plants. In Mexico, we're a little bit over 15,000 people with 18 plants. And we've been working with Banco de Alimentos, I don't know, more than 30 years, I believe. And Nestle has been here in Mexico for a little bit more than 90 years. And well, I'm in charge of corporate affairs for Mexico. and pleasure to have you here in Mexico. Julie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am Julie Yurko, and I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of Northern Illinois Food Bank. So we are a food bank that serves the suburb and the rural areas of Northern Illinois. If you know where Chicago is, you know where my food bank is. That might help ground some folks. We cover 13 counties in Illinois, and it's a population of about 4 million people, of which at any given time we have about 7 to 10% of that population who are food insecure. I did my math last night to translate our distribution into tons. And so we distribute 46 million tons of food every year, of which 65% of that, or about 30 million tons, is donated to us. One of our main focus areas is on making sure we're serving our neighbors who are seeking help in ways that empower them, making sure they not only have access to food, but they have the food that they need and want. And so supply chain is really, really important to us right now, and I'm delighted to be a part of this panel. I have to say this is my first GFN Leadership Institute. Being so close to Chicago, I've had the privilege of welcoming many food banks from around the country to visit our food bank because of GFN, and I just have to say, just 24 hours or whatever the time is within this conference, I am so amazed. I am so humbled. I'm learning so much from all of you, so thank you for having me here today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, Julie. Our newfound friend Elijah just came in. He's been 24 hours just before he hit the ground. So,
thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Chef Elijah Amuadu. I'm the founder and executive director of Food for All Africa. Food for All Africa operates one of the first and largest food bank in West Africa, specifically Ghana. Our vision has always been to connect excess food within our supply chain to vulnerable families and communities who have mostly had it in the area of having purchasing power. But for years, we've always had to look out at food banking from the developed world. And in 2019, we were fortunate to be at FBLI, my first of its kind, where we had the opportunity to say to GFN that it is about time that food banking in sub-Saharan Africa is taken serious, because there is a lot of food going waste along the supply chain. And COVID gave us that rare opportunity. In as much as it's a disaster, it gave us that opportunity to prove not just to our beneficiaries, but to various stakeholders within our food supply chain that indeed food banking is that center that holds where there is excess food with those that don't have. Today, Food for All Africa, right from COVID last year, we were able to serve over 100,000 beneficiaries through various programs. We were able to serve 3 million meals, and today we run one of the largest school feeding initiative that is private sector led in supporting vulnerable children from community schools that don't have any means of nutrition during school hours. But then as well, we also create employment opportunities for some of these mothers. And for me, being at FBLI this year is another opportunity to learn more, and especially given the challenges that we face. And thanks for the opportunity.
well, thank you for being here, honestly. And you know what, I got to give props to Tony for putting this panel together, along with a whole bunch of other things that Tony and the team does. So, yep. You did good, Lisa. You did good. So, first question, Sylvia. We all know how Chep Brambles is such a huge leader in the industry, and if you know, Chep, we're talking pallets, right? So we are all affected in some way, somehow by that, and especially during the past few years. So can you share a little bit how your clients have been impacted really by the supply chain disruptions and how the disruptions really rippled out to affect our customers?
Yes, of course. Well, I guess the name of the conference couldn't be any better, no? Age of volatility, because it was not only COVID, but also now in the recent time with the war in Ukraine and Russia, and now inflation, that we have seen everything that is disrupted, right? So how that has affected our customers, in our case, and thank you for mentioning that we provide pallets in a pooling as a mean of a rental. So we have to do a lot with food because most of our customers are within food. So what we have seen is since the rise of COVID, poverty levels rose, and that changed dramatically also patterns of consumption all over the place. So it was not only, the fact that there was a timber scarcity, but also changes in the consumption that framed different ways of moving products from one place to the other. Then, of course, we saw also the impact of e-commerce growing at a dramatic rate. And that also changed the way all the goods were moving from one place to another. And then also we saw natural disasters, how they are affecting the supply chain. And they are not affecting only because they impact consumption or they impact the supply chain specifically, but also in our case, we source our raw materials from nature. So anything that happens, we just were talking about the fires in Chile. So our main source of raw material is affected also by that. So that goes and passes on to the full chain. So that affected all over the companies with all these changes in consumption, sources of materials, growth of e-commerce. So it generated big changes in patterns that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's so true. And really, who knew toilet paper was going to be the thing in 2020, right? We needed pallets to put. If anybody could still answer why toilet paper, you'd answer the question of the century, right? But I think that's you kind of led into the disaster part too, because aside from dealing with COVID, aside from seeing all the mass distributions across the globe, we still had to deal with natural disasters.
Yes.
And we were still counting on you to pull from all that. Every food bank, every company. So, thank you for keeping up. Juan Carlos is up next. So, being the largest food company in the world, how have these disruptions impacted Nestle's ability to get food to consumers?
Well, Danny, of course, the first issue is how to keep moving, no? How to maintain the business as usual, the business continuity with the disruptions. And first, it was an issue of all our suppliers, no? Our suppliers of raw materials. If you can imagine, we buy fresh milk, for instance, in Mexico for more than 3,000 people every day. So we still had to buy those products that needed to be transformed. And if you can imagine this worldwide, we said, well, let's start stacking all the product that we can, because we need that the farms don't actually stop, no? And we're in the food chain, so we need to make sure that the resilience and the vulnerability that we had with all our people, the frontline people in the plants, no? Because for many of us, it was easy to go and work from home. But being in the distribution centers and being in the plants, not knowing what's going to happen to you, no? That you were putting your life out there to produce. So the responsibility that we had was to make sure that our colleagues were fine, that They were not sick. Thankfully, the rate of people that actually died, it was very, very low worldwide. But of course, the responsibility and the vulnerability that we had to say, okay, now we have the product. We need to start stacking the product, not only raw materials, but packaging and all the food, and start using e-commerce. No? It was something completely unimaginable, no? And well, of course, everyone has talked about the crisis for the containers and the prices of food and everything. But at the end, we were able to manage. We had to change our plans of what we were producing, because we had to produce whatever we had in place, not whatever we want to produce. No? And some of those products, of course, are first need, like powder milk or soluble coffee. So it was a big issue for us to try and maintain business as usual. But together with all the partners, we were able to manage and keep focus on the suppliers first. No?
And you know, really kind of led into this, and I want to say a big thank you to first responders during this whole time. I see all of you as first responders, and again, essential workers, because really everyone on your teams, it wasn't like we couldn't take a day off. We still had to, yeah, we laid low for a little bit, but then all of a sudden we had to ramp back up regardless. And the business models changed. And if you weren't ready at that point, then you were going to be behind the curve. And luckily there was enough of the businesses to be able to say, to shift and to pivot and to actually react to the market. So really, again, thank you for keeping our shelves stocked, because one of the first things that food banks were asking was that how we can help was by able to keep our store stocked. And again, without pallets and without product, that would not be, we wouldn't be able to do. All right, Elijah. So, knowing these disruptions impacted Ghana, and plus you also had a change financially within your region. Can you talk about that and what the effects were for you and how you reacted to them?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so being an emerging food bank in the height of COVID, we became a star in bringing food to vulnerable people. And for us, it was an opportunity we've always looked out for to prove the importance of food banking. However, when we realized that not just COVID, but we live in a world where things can change at any moment in time. Just by when we were over the glory for the good job we've done, Ghana, with a country of 33 million, we were faced with the issue of the dollar rising so high that $1 equivalent to our currency within 6 months increased over 150%. And what it meant then was that quickly what we as a country that depends so much on import, especially in the area of food product, means that the price of food, whatever increase that the dollar is bringing to the price of food, definitely is going to be pushed onto the final consumer. And that quickly brought in the challenge of having to look at how we as a food bank will be ready to support and change the means through which we provide support for our beneficiaries, not only depending, for instance, food products like corn, grains that were known to be staple food for low-income communities, people from very low-income families. All of a sudden, the prices just kept increasing, basically because of the challenge that the disruptions in the supply chain has brought about. And most often, the excuse that we had, especially from people in power, had always been that definitely the Russia and Ukraine war affecting the availability of fertilizer, hence affecting the smallholder farmer who produces these food products that are much affordable to mostly the low-income people. And for us as a food bank, what it meant to us then as well to do was that we needed to look at innovative ways of looking beyond other sectors of the food supply chain and then working with community-based groups in order for food to get to communities where the disruption in the food supply chain has affected them. And we had to adapt to virtual food banking in some communities where we had to now go to these communities with the needed support. Whereas at a point we were mostly in city centers and then they come to us, we realized we need to scale our activities to move to them, because then the availability of food for them becomes even more of a challenge.
Your model changed tremendously. And that's a good segue for Julie on the disruption, right? So how did that have an impact on your food bank, then, and did it affect you really kind of a long term? And have you kind of made, because of those changes, pivots, right? Have you kind of made that a new way of doing food banking, handling food banking?
We used to talk about when things would get back to normal. Then we said when things would get back to better, because we were trying to be very optimistic. And then we said it's just all a new better, right? We all have to get to a new better. So for my food bank, around food supply and other household and personal items, we typically, pre-pandemic, would get 80% of that donated to us. 80%, and we'd get about 10% from the government, and we'd buy 10%. So that was the old way. As soon as COVID hit, we saw that disrupted massively. First, the US government leaned in very heavy into providing a lot of food out to food banks, which was terrific for my food bank. We were able to triple the amount of government food we were getting out through the system. We desperately needed it because donations were so disrupted. Particularly in the early days, the retail sector, the grocery stores, those plummeted, those went down, and they went down very fast. Thankfully, they did start to recover. Manufacturing and the food that we get donated from the agricultural system, that also went down, and that has been much more slow to recover for us. Unfortunately, for us and for many food banks in the United States, that government's food has almost disappeared. So we are back to where we were pre-pandemic in government food, or even less. This year, we're actually anticipating having less government food than we've ever had in my 14 years at the food bank, which is pretty incredible. Donations are coming back to us. We have a very robust retail program. It's something that happens a lot at food banks within the United States, where we go out into stores and we're gleaning that food. Some is done by the food bank. Much of it, most of it, is done by our food pantry partners. And we have been leaning hard into that. And so we've gotten that back to pre-pandemic levels, and we're seeing it actually click up a little bit, which is awesome. And we're so grateful to our retail partners. As I mentioned, manufacturing, that has been much slower to come back, and that's all around supply chain, right? That's all around do we have aluminum for cans, right? Do we have glass for bottles? We are seeing some of that come back now, but that is not back to where we were. And then a little fun fact about Illinois, 2% of our crops are specialty crops. So gosh, I wish we had great agriculture in my region. We don't. Most of what we grow is for feed, corn and soybeans. So for our produce, we're really having to look differently at how can we bring in produce, how can we bring that in fairly within our food bank system, where else can we go to get what we need. I do think the volatility, I do think the uncertainty is what we're all grappling with, and we will continue to grapple with that for years to come. And unfortunately, I do think it means for our neighbors, I mentioned how much we want to get the food our neighbors need and want, what is nutritious, what is culturally affirming for them, and we're finding that to be more and more of a challenge. So what we're doing is we're leaning hard into purchased food. That has grown from about 10% up to 25% of the food we're distributing, we're buying. It is not sustainable. We have tripled our purchased food budget. We are looking at who are those suppliers that we can count on. How do we need to shift with those suppliers? We hope to be able to sustain this level for the next 2 to 3 years, thanks to the generosity of our communities, but it's really questionable for us right now.
Yeah, you hit that right. And, you know, as a retailer, our program donating at store levels and at the warehouse levels really just started to shim off. And it put us in a really different type of position where we're always trying to say, you know, Brian, what do you need, Brian, today? Or, you know, Eric, what do you need? What does, you know, the Texas network need? And it's food. And we were put in a position where we try to make those matches with our suppliers and our vendors, but the product wasn't there. And it was really hard to grasp that. And, you know, but luckily we've come back, you know, and we're looking at doing more produce and, you know, trying to get our donations back to where they were. But it is a challenge. Okay, Sylvia, you ready? All right. What are you seeing related to when and how surplus food is becoming available due to disruptions in the supply chain?
Well, I guess surplus is limited, right? So I would say that there is the traditional perspective where you would be catching almost at any opportunity that you can ever get, no? But I guess this is the time to be more smart and agile, to think how we catch on the silver linings, because we have talked about inflation in some of the places. Inflation affects to a portion of the consumption, but then of course there is going to be food that people will not be affording to buy. So how would you allow the access through technology, through faster services, through collaboration to get access to that? I guess that is important. And of course, country to country is going to be, it will still be on the edge of volatility. So no, I am afraid not to bring good news for what we see is going to be this year and the coming year for the globe, I would say. So catch on seasonalities, follow what is happening with inflation, because I guess those are the opportunities we would have to be trying to catch.
Yeah, we're still going to have to pivot. Regardless, we're still going to have to try to react to what's happening out in the globe. So, Juan Carlos, that's a good question leading up to you. As far as for food banks, do they need to know, you know, with these changes and the impact and the quantity available of surplus food, what do food banks really need to know? What can you enlighten them with?
Well, I would say the first thing is adaptability, no? To live with the uncertainty, I believe that that's going to be the constant. The only thing that we can say that it'll be constant for the next few years is going to be change. So basically to have the adaptability to look for in different places. I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity still when you work with the food loss, food waste, and you still see that 30% of the food that is produced, it's still wasted, no? I mean, I do believe that we have a long way to go in this part. I believe that not single supply chains, but it'll be less complex, and I believe that we will still have the opportunity to use mixed supply chains, meaning that the food sellers will help us, the companies, instead of going directly or coming back to us and then we go directly to the food banks. I believe that there's an opportunity to see how we can manage this better for freshness and for availability. No? Now, of course, supply chains, instead of being so global, they start to be much more regional or much more local. No? and maybe some programs will start to focus on the first needs of the people that are in our supply chains. Meaning, for instance, before I would go to 100% of the food banks in Mexico, and now I'm going to the food banks near where my plants are, or to the food for farmers, where the farmers of the coffee growers or the milk farmers are. So I believe that there's going to be a change in the products available in different regions. No?
Okay. So we still need to kind of, with sustainability being talked about nowadays, right? We still need to look at better ways how we can, and not just from you, as from retailers too as well, you know, how do we not send product to waste? You know, there's still so many opportunities out there, and really appreciate the both of you to be able to connect in those particular areas of the world that you're in with food banks to those folks to be able to access to that product, because we know it all goes a long way, you know? So with that, Elijah, we know that you're a fairly brand new food bank. So how logistically, you know, we do know that there's a lot of things going into food bank logistic models, and are you considering implementing or, you know, perhaps making better anything that you're doing now, such as virtual food banking or direct distributions?
Sure, thank you. So as a new and growing food bank, especially in the region of the world, which is Africa, where food banking is still novel, we're trying to build a food banking model that really works for Africa, and it's community oriented. For us, building partnerships at the local level has been very critical, especially with stakeholders within the food supply chain, looking at the different sectors of our food supply chain and where opportunities are. For instance, the agri sector. Quite recently, about a week ago, the Danish Embassy, through a research they carried out with different stakeholders, revealed that $1.4 billion worth of fresh yam. Yam is a staple crop of Ghana. It's lost in Ghana each year. And that clearly shows that where we've had government concentrate more in the area of food loss, thinking that to overcome the challenges of food insecurity, it's more about increasing production. We have come to the fore to let stakeholders know that the issue of food insecurity and hunger is more about building partnerships to enable food banks at the community level have the needed infrastructure. And for us, leading the fore as a young food bank, which other young initiatives look up to, we always want to make sure that we leverage on the logistics that we have available, the technical know-how that we receive through the global food banking network, to be able to build resilience in the face of the disruptions that we face within our food supply chain, and for also having the opportunity to leverage on a network of other similar initiatives within the region, like in Kenya, in Nigeria. I'm able, as a small food bank in Ghana, I'm able to get in touch easily with my colleagues in Kenya, with my colleagues in Nigeria, to know if they're facing similar situation and how we share best practices and know-how towards overcoming most of these challenges.
Awesome. Well, you know what, you kind of wade into how GFN's helping you. So that was going to be my question. What's GFN doing to help you, you know, as far as moving ahead? So that's something really, really I'm glad to hear, because I know a lot of other food banks that are out there really want to know and feel good about GFN and the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome. Julie, what about your food banking? You know, have you incorporated new things, mobile distributions, bigger distributions? Has that model changed with you?
In terms of distributing the food, absolutely, absolutely. We know that folks, neighbors who are seeking help don't always come to us because they don't know about us, they can't get to us, or they're ashamed. And so for us, how we distribute the food to the consumer, to the neighbor seeking help, is really important. And so certainly at the beginning of COVID, like so many food banks, we had mass distributions. We called them pop-ups. They were, we were serving up to 2,000 families over a 2 to 3 hour period, and they would drive through and get the food that was pre-packed in a box for them. We are continuing that model. We have talked with our neighbors, we have surveyed our neighbors. We know that highly anonymous, very quick, I don't have to make a huge commitment to getting my food, even though I don't have choice, is something they really desire. But then there's shopping, right? And there's choice. And we've been able to bring that back. That was closed down for a period, but we've been able to bring that back. So folks can come back into our food pantries, our food bank-owned food pantry, and they can shop and get the food they need. But also it requires some time and it requires some information. We're going to ask them for information that we need to report to the government. Our largest innovation is around providing groceries online. So very similar, right? We keep watching what H-E-B and all these wonderful retailers are doing, right? And how we're all getting our groceries. And we know that ordering online and picking them up at a time that's convenient for us or having them delivered to us is really important. And so together with Feeding America, we launched an online food pantry. We call ours mypantryexpress.org. We have 35 to 40 shelf-stable items, and then we add on additional produce, protein, and dairy for our neighbors, and they can place an order, and that order will be fulfilled for them, and then they can pick it up at a local distribution site. It could be a food pantry, it could be one of our food bank sites, or it's a Walmart store or a Goodwill store. And we did that to remove stigma, right? If I'm going to my Walmart, I may not feel so embarrassed, right? Because I go there all the time for other things. We also have delivery, which is being provided to us by DoorDash, and we're looking at some other ways as well. So we have seen that grow from, about 75, 80 orders a week. We're now doing 1,900 orders a week. We're going to fulfill almost 90,000 orders this year and provide about 3 million meals through that.
That's awesome. So you're tailoring. Right?
We're totally tailoring. Yeah, like I said, we're just trying to do what you all are doing.
Yeah.
Because everyone deserves that, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Everyone
You're absolutely
deserves that, right? Everyone
Everybody
deserves that.
deserves it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Deserves that. And I think really one of the best things to come out of COVID, as far as, we love working with Feeding Texas, our food banks in Texas, but there's also other certain areas of opportunity, right? We've been working with colleges because there's a huge need for students right now. And there's a lot of work being done within the colleges setting up pantries. And some of these pantries they do fall under the Texas food banks. But to be able to help sponsor some of these pop-ups at the colleges, as far as a retailer, and that means a lot to us. We look for those different opportunities and see, we're asking how the food banks can get creative. And then once we find something and we looked at it and you guys have done it, and it's something, hey, let's continue to do this. So my thing to the food banks is continue to be creative. We love that you guys are getting out into the rural areas. Wheels are our friend, and we just, again, applaud all the work that you guys have done. So with that, for all the panelists here, we're going to do a rapid fire on this question. And we're going to start off with Juan Carlos. If you had a crystal ball, what is one prediction you would make about changes that will occur in the supply chain in the next 1 to 2 years? I hope that crystal ball is really clear.
I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say shared supply chains. I believe that sustainability is bringing us to understand how we can better manage shared supply chains. I believe that we understand that together we're better, and that it's an era to share, not to compete. No? Sadly, sometimes it has to come to disasters or to this kind of crisis to understand that we need to be together and everyone has its place. But I believe that sharing and doing things together, even because it makes sense, you have less resources. No, because if you say, well, digital and e-commerce, well, yeah, but some things you still have to go and put them in some place and produce in other place. So yeah, technology is not going to help us in all those ways, but it can help us. Technology will help us bring those shared supply chains to a better use, and for all sizes, not only for small businesses, but I believe that it's going to be even for big businesses that we will start using those shared supply chains, and that will help us have it.
It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Yes.
So, appreciate that. Sylvia?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I see three things that are going to be converging. One is very important. It is what Juan just mentioned, and Elijah in some way, that we see that it's going to be an age of collaboration. We don't see that how we can walk away from that, but how we can strengthen ourselves by collaborating. And in fact, it is part of what we are trying to do. And collaboration can come in many ways. For example, us as responsible of a portion of the supply chain, it is enhancing transport collaboration, for example. No? Think, for example, that Nestle is launching one product that has to go from point A to point B, and we are supplying the medium to get from A to B. And perhaps a competitor is going from A to B at the same time, okay? So why not sharing that transport that will diminish, the cost of servicing, and of course it will diminish also the impact in the atmosphere as a result. So that is just one form of collaboration, and we are already piloting some of that around the world to see that happening through technology. So one is collaboration. The second is, of course, moving to more sustainable supply chains. We as CHEP think of our operation. We have over 360 million pallets around the world moving all the time. So how we regenerate, how we make them more efficient, how we collect them in a best way that we keep them moving and not using as more resources as we currently do. And of course, how that optimizes, how the pooling optimizes, CO2 reduction, waste reduction. So we see in sustainability that models will become more circular from time to time, and we will have to be closer to the operations, as they mentioned, to be more on the spot. And then finally, the age of digitization. We see that through digitizing, for example, our product, we will be able to see how the products are moving, what are the times that are involved in that, what are the best routes the product can be moved. And again, as we are dealing with food, if we are able through technology to understand the flows of the food, we will diminish waste, we will improve time to market. So we see all those three things converging: collaboration, circular models, and then finally technology put in the service of a more agile and more quick supply chains.
It's all about efficiencies.
Yes.
Right? We're all trying to be as efficient as we possibly can, but also trying to be good to Mother Nature. But I do love the piece that you're working with, I'm not going to say your competitors, to be able to find the common ground, right?
Yes.
And I think in our world, if we look at it on the retail side, there's no competition between us, a Walmart, or Kroger, when we're talking about donating food. Mm-hmm. There's a price of doing business, and as a price of that, you're going to have shrink. And if you're able to donate it to somebody who's be able to put it on their table, then that's the right thing to do. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, Julie, you're up for the question.
Sure. So definitely not being a supply chain expert, I chose to look up some facts because as some folks in the audience, Emily Ma knows, I love my data. So I found a study by COPA, which is a business spend management company, and they said in 2022, 4 out of 5 organizations saw one significant supply chain disruption. 4 out of 5 of our companies, 80% of us. 50% of us saw 3 or more significant supply chain disruptions. That was last year. 82% of the supply chain leaders that they surveyed said that they expect the supply chain challenges to at best stay the same, but most likely worsen. So, holy cow, right? That was a little sobering to me. So many of those disruptions are around transportation, which we know, often driven by labor, driven by capacity, just other disruptions. Also the shortage of goods. And we have seen that so much, right? Food, gas, computer chips, and it's disrupting us so much. And so when I thought about it, and I thought about as the receiving end, don't get so efficient, please, Sylvie. Please don't get so efficient. Keep some inefficiencies in your system because we benefit from them, right? But as someone on that end, I thought it just is going to drive us to think more strategically about how we might pivot as these things come to us, right? We have pivoted so well over the last 3 years. We have looked at every opportunity and figured out how we might continue to get the food our neighbors need and want and get it back out as systems globally. And so I just think for us, we're going to have to be smarter. We're going to have to lean into partnership. We're going to have to really make sure we're maintaining our relationships and find continued strength, right, determination to pivot as we need.
Chef?
Well, who would have thought that the last 3 years would show to us, especially Africa, that challenges in any part of the world can quickly have its effect on us, wherever we find ourselves as middle income, low income countries. And it brings to the fore the importance of we having to hone up to the challenges that disruptions within our food supply chain brings. I think on a continental level, the African Union, through the African After Trade Agreement with its headquarters in Ghana, have taken a step. However, I believe there's more to be done, especially in the area of inclusiveness, in the area of efficiency, in the area of not just looking at it from the business perspective, but as well the social benefits that lures to the most vulnerable in society. And for us, it's a good opportunity to have organizations like GFN helping food banks on the African continent. But then it also brings us that responsibility to hone up ensuring that we're not just learning food banking, but we are creating a food banking model that can be honed by communities on the continent. Because obviously GFN will not provide support to Food for All Africa or food bank in Kenya with the expectation that we learn food banking and expect to get excess produce from, let's say, Leket, Israel, or get from other developed food banks, as it has always been when it comes to the area of food dependence on the continent from other parts of the world. So for us as food banks, owning this, seeing the opportunity of this and the support we are receiving from GFN as a responsibility to take the conversation to our local communities, to our local authorities, leaders, and then as well bringing it onto the continental level and forging that same partnership to see that the solution that food banking brings to vulnerable people in society is sustainable, and as well is a means to ensure efficiency within our food supply chain.
So you're digging in deep. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Julie, you're digging in deeper. All right. So I think really the honest thing is that we are going to have to dig deep. And if you think you've dug as deep as you can, well, you haven't. You need to dig some more. It's still there. And again, Sylvia, Juan Carlos, thank you. Because I know there's not one person up here or in here that goes to bed not thinking about what's tomorrow, especially in the supply chain issues. So thank you for everything that you do, your companies do, because I know both of you are well respected in your fields. You're welcome. Now we have a little bit of time for some questions, and I'm not too sure if anybody's going to be able to get you truckloads of Nestle hot chocolate here really quick, but yeah, please, if you have a question, just wait for the mic. Somebody will get to you. I think we see somebody over there.
Hey, Brian from Houston. Not a question, but I love the tone of the conversation. Challenges in the supply chain. In the late '80s, my first national conference in the U.S., there was a panel called "The Food Industry Speaks," and it was representatives from major food companies, and they all told us the exact same thing. That they all said the same thing with each other, that we're going to get less food, that they're getting more efficient, and the opportunities are going down. Any food bank that bet on that horribly underserved their community as a result. I mean, the reality is, it's the optimists that build the world, and there's still so much opportunity, so hopefully everybody's taking out the positive that there's pivots, there's changes, but there's lots of opportunity for us to help our neighbors far more.
Thank you, Brian. I know there's some questions rolling out there.
Gracias. Sí. Buenos días. Mariana Jiménez, directora de Alianzas e Inversión Social de la Red BAMEX. Muchas felicidades. El panel.
From the social partnerships of the BAMEX network. Maria Jimenez from the BAMEX network. Very interesting panel. We understand that in nature, the species that don't adapt to change disappear. That applies today to organizations, and mainly organizations like food banks that depend on supply chains. I have a question for Juan Carlos. Number one, I want to thank you, Juan Carlos, for the partnership that we have with BAMEX at the national level and at the global level with Nestle, and the hope that you bring to the families that we serve. But I want to ask you, as a company, and with all the changes that you are seeing coming in the horizon, and of course in the pretty short term, how do you believe that we as food banks need to adapt to continue to be inserted strategically in your shared value chain or shared supply chain?
That the issue is that food producers or big companies are not the only ones that need to be in your supply chain. For instance, 30% of the food that is lost, it's in the first mile or the first part of the supply chain. I've always said that having a real cooperation with farming associations could help a lot to bring more of those products that are actually not being I mean, we're not used to bringing that as much as we can. No, there's another third part that it's after consumption, because the food banks are doing a great job first with industrialized food, then with the farming or coming from farms. But I still believe that there's a space where we can even help you. No, our companies with our supply chains can help you food banks, because we're already bringing a lot of product from the farms into the production sites or to cities. So I think that there's something that we can do there.
That's a good for an offline conversation. You know, how you guys were able to connect together on that as well. Any more questions? You're letting them off too easy. No? Yeah, Suru.
Perhaps just following on the question that was just raised, I guess that also as companies will tend to become more efficient, that is an undeniable truth. So I guess that how we are shifting the corporate thinking towards adopting the necessity to support the community. So I guess that it doesn't fight how you become efficient, but how you build a common understanding on your role in society and on your role in the community and how you plan to help. So for example, in our case, we are pullers. We have pallets. We don't manufacture any food, but we are conscious that through education and through devoting a portion of our P&L to support food banking and to support communities is part of our good corporate citizenship. So I guess we will have, as companies, to shift towards that as we move into a more efficient system.
I think it's incumbent on those of us that are requesting that help from companies to be sure to align with the business priorities, right? That's why yesterday's conversation about carbon footprint and environmental impact, so important, right? So how can we align to a company? So many companies have adopted zero waste, right? How do we show them that we are effective in helping the company meet that goal? Like, that's incumbent on us. And to have small prayers that every once in a while there's an efficiency glitch.
We have another question? Oh, back there.
Sí, buenos días a todos. Daniel Tapia, director.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Tapia. I'm the director of the Food Bank in Culiacán, Sinaloa, Mexico. In our bank, we have issues. We have a lot of agricultural production in our state, but over 1,000 tons of produce is wasted every day. So we're working on our infrastructure. We need to have more warehouses, more storage facilities. But the question is, what does logistics, transportation, what role does it play? How significant is the role of logistics, particularly transportation? How feasible do you see it? How feasible do you think it is for a food bank to have their own transportation fleet?
Thank you. Yeah, I think one major reason why most often companies would want to throw away food has to do with considering the logistics challenge that comes into play. So for a food bank, bringing this food, connecting this food to vulnerable populations, one of the key elements of your operation has to do with the transportation, getting the food to the beneficiaries. And in communities where we serve, for instance, in Ghana, it's one thing to go collect the food, is another thing to get the food to the beneficiary, because the beneficiary doesn't even have the means of transportation to come to your facility to get the food. So as a food bank, it brings in the challenge of not just the transportation. When you talk about transportation, you're talking about the fleet, you're talking about fuel. And faced with increasing fuel crisis, where prices of fuel keeps going very high, as a food bank, you easily also have to look to adapt into innovative ways that will ensure that you are still being able to get the food to the beneficiary at a cost that is quite lower. And for us, this past year, it's one area that has made us start looking at our cost of distribution, how we are able to effectively deliver more food support to more beneficiaries beyond our reach, but at the same time doing it, considering cost of that distribution.
And I'll add, I think it's very important to have a fleet that can provide the service to the company from which you're getting your food, right? I think it's really, really important to have a dependable, safe fleet so you can go out when you get that call, when you have that offer, and make sure you can get it, because companies are bottom line driven, as they should be, right? That's how they make themselves sustainable, and so they may not be willing to cover the cost of getting the food to you.
I think I kind of want to go back to the question really quick. We got a little bit of time left, but I think education is really a huge piece of this. When you have new vendors coming up, in your day-to-day workings, and educating them about the food banks within their areas that they're working with, and making those contacts, I think that's really huge. We try to do that when we're onboarding our new folks that are our vendors who are coming up, and we always say, if there's any sort of excess surplus, which not a lot of lately, but really get in contact with me, and we'll get in contact with the food bank, and we'll get that. And I think there's some folks, I think with the H-E-B, our grocery company, we were lucky enough to be able to have our hunger relief department developed under public affairs. So that is a pillar of our company, education, hunger relief. And I think if for me and my team going out there and knocking on our BDM's doors and saying, hey, if you got anything extra, remember, we got Brian out there in the Houston area, or we got San Antonio or the Valley, we're always thinking about that. So again, we're kind of almost out of time, but there any other questions that are out there that anybody wants to ask? Okay. All righty. Well, got time for one more question, Tony? I'm sorry. Quick one.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm keeping everyone from the break. Hi there, Michael Jones from RAP, and proud partner of Pacto por la Comida. It was just a question around, obviously we've been talking about disruption and volatility and the impacts of climate change, whether that be extreme weather, water stress, and biodiversity loss. They're all becoming more evident, more frequent, more extreme. And we talked about the issue of adapting to those situations. I was just wondering how we not only adapt, but resurrect and indeed go further and incorporate climate into the supply chain further and faster.
So I'm not understanding the question on that one, though.
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about adapting to
Right.
conditions such as climate change.
Okay.
But how do we actually go further? No, we're not only just adapting to the issue, but we're actually resurrecting it. We're actually making the climate more favourable to enabling production to happen at the pace, etc., that we want to. So it's just that thinking about the climate within the supply chain. How do we not only adapt to what the issues that we face now, but we improve for the future?
Well, in the case of our company, our focus is on regeneration. So we have already passed over being net to providing a plus to nature. So in the coming years and at the present time, we are planting more trees than what we are using currently. So that is our focus, to regenerate as much as possible, to be within the cycle of nature. optimizing energy, and of course shifting to renewable energy. That's what we are doing.
Part of your sustainability program.
Yes.
There you go. All right. Well, we're gonna stop right there, and we're gonna let everybody go to break. And I want to thank our panelists today. And if you see them around here, feel free to ask them any questions. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
I was running inside of the shadows like a wolf who